goddess who captivated countless players' hearts, is now locked in a jar, turned into a specimen. Not only is she displayed for people to see daily, but her blood is also continuously extracted. And the one who did all of this is the hero who saved the world. This story begins 3 years ago. A boy accidentally crossed into the game world, but he didn't become the hero to save the world. Instead, he became a lazy NPC. Just as he thought he could pass the game by doing nothing, he unexpectedly ran into the game's protagonist on the roadside, and he discovered that the protagonist was also a traveler from another world. However, the protagonist claimed he had never played this game before. As a seasoned player, the boy became his guide. Thus, the two began their adventure to save the world. Although they were both from other worlds, the main difference was that the protagonist had a system, while the boy had nothing. But this didn't stop them from moving forward. Looking at the pile of monster corpses underfoot, the protagonist handed the boy a quick recovery potion. This was something the protagonist did every time they defeated beasts. Although the boy didn't know where this magical potion came from, he didn't pay much attention to it. It seemed like everything was heading in a good direction. The only thing he felt regretful about was that their adventuring party had no female characters. In the boy's impression, this game, besides its twists and turns in the adventure, also had a rich and colorful heroine development system. But as for the protagonist, Park Shi-ho, not only did he not interact with any female characters, he only brought them into the party when absolutely necessary. Still, the boy didn't find this suspicious. But as the plot progressed, more and more outrageous things happened. First, one of the heroines, Elisa, died on the way to school. Then, the main heroine and final boss, Marriott, mysteriously disappeared. All of this deviated from the original game storyline. On top of that, Park Shi-ho's unpredictable personality added to the mystery. This inevitably made the boy start to have doubts. Until one day, he accidentally stumbled into the protagonist's secret base. Not only were all sorts of artifacts displayed here, but even the heroines had been turned into specimens and placed in jars. Just as the boy was utterly shocked, a cold voice came from behind him. "What are you doing here?" When the boy turned and saw it was Park Shi-ho, he questioned him in disbelief. "Why are all the weapons used by the heroines displayed here? And why is Marriott's body here?" Park Shi-ho responded with an eerie laugh. "I just made her blood more useful," realizing that the potions he drank earlier came from the heroine's blood. A wave of nausea surged through the boy. But the protagonist didn't see this as a problem. He believed it was a more effective way to advance the plot. Instead of protecting uncontrollable people, why not turn them into more valuable objects? It was at this moment that the boy fully understood. Everything Park Shi-ho said before was a lie. He was never a novice player. Looking at the room filled with gear, the boy asked in horror, "How many game characters have you killed?" Facing the accusation, Park Shi-ho's eyes showed no emotion. He merely said calmly, "Just 3 more and I'll have reached 100,000. The boy couldn't believe what he just heard. Grabbing Park Shi-ho by the collar, he shouted, "You're a monster. Even if they're just game characters, they're still people with thoughts and feelings." However, Park Shi-ho's eyes remained cold. He threw the boy to the ground. "Everything I've done was for you. You shouldn't always be staring at those sluts." So they all had to die. These words struck the boy like lightning. What the hell is this lunatic saying? They had been together for 199 chapters. Why had everything suddenly changed so drastically? At that moment, he finally understood why Park Shi-ho only invited boys to join the team. But he couldn't accept this as reality. He immediately punched Park Shi-ho in the face. Thinking about how he'd never had a girlfriend at this age, he turned and bolted toward the door. But it was already too late. As Park Shi-ho muttered a few incantations, magical chain tightly bound the boy. No matter how much he screamed, it was futile. Park Shi-ho revealed a sinister grin. "Everything in this world is fake. But you're the only real thing. So we must stay together forever." With those words, the boy's vision went black. His entire world fell into silence. Time seemed to pass unknowingly. The boy could no longer predict what would happen next. Perhaps when Park Shi-ho defeated all the bosses. But just then, a sudden notification lit up before his eyes. "Player has DED challenge failed." Before he could process the shock, looking out at the familiar scene outside the window, tears streamed down his face uncontrollably. No matter what, he would kill that man. The so-called hero who will save the world. Park Shi-ho. Park Shi-ho once used a flood to kill tens of thousands of aquatic monsters and NPCs. Seeing his rapidly increasing experience, he let out an eerie laugh. At the time, the boy didn't understand why he was like that. But now he realized that Park Shi-ho had always been a lunatic. However, at this point, both Park Shi-ho and the boy were still only level 5. Which meant that before Park Shi-ho entered the academy to become a monster, now was the best time to kill him. So the boy quickly moved in Park Shi-ho's direction. Along the way, he gathered poisonous mushrooms from the forest. Meanwhile, Park Shi-ho's team had just completed an escort mission. As they prepared to leave, a ferocious werewolf suddenly appeared. By time for Park Shi-ho to escape. The team leader sacrificed himself to fend off the monster. But Park Shi-ho chose not to leave. He shouted that he would never abandon his teammates. Yet, he watched as one by one, his teammates fell before him. Meanwhile, the boy arrived and witnessed the scene. He realized he was still a step too late. But he didn't act immediately. He still wasn't sure if the boy in front of him was truly the hero saving the world. Or the traveler Park Shi-ho. So he could only continue observing his actions. Just as the werewolf opened its jaws wide, ready to bite Park Shi-ho, a girl suddenly stepped in front of him. It was Elisa Yarden, one of the heroines. As the second daughter of the Yarden family, she had inherited one of the 6 king's swords. Facing the powerful werewolf, she showed no fear. But at that moment, Park Shi-ho suddenly drew a poisoned dagger from his waist, and stabbed it directly into Elisa's back. Realizing her teammate had betrayed her, Elisa's eyes filled with shock. Seeing this, the boy immediately confirmed that the protagonist now was indeed the demon Park Shi-ho. Meanwhile, the poison began to take effect on Elisa, causing her consciousness to blur. However, the werewolf's attack didn't stop. She could only barely lift her sword to block. The situation was becoming increasingly dire. Elisa took a deep breath, preparing to use her ultimate move to finish off the werewolf. A surge of immense magic power erupted from her body. But there was no way Park Shi-ho would let that happen. He threw another poisoned dagger at Elisa. Elisa had no choice but to interrupt her skill to deflect the dagger. But the werewolf's attack was already upon her. Her battle instincts made her react immediately. She reversed her sword grip and drove it straight into the werewolf's skull. However, her body also suffered a devastating blow. And so, both of them collapsed into a pool of blood. Park Shi-ho picked up the holy sword that had fallen nearby. At this moment, his eyes were filled with greed and madness. He looked at the motionless Elisa, raising the sword in his hand to finish her off completely. Just as Elisa thought she was about to meet her end, a bag of powder suddenly hit Park Shi-ho on the head. The unexpected attack covered him completely in powder. This powder was made from the mushrooms the boy had collected along the way. It could attract magical beasts by making them think he was food. In an instant, several magical beasts appeared around Park Shi-ho. They surrounded him tightly. Meanwhile, the boy seized the opportunity to drag Elisa out from under the werewolf. He then pulled out one of the werewolf's fangs. Just as he was about to make his next move, Park Shi-ho suddenly appeared behind him. As expected of the hero wielding the holy sword, he had defeated 3 magical beasts in just 1 minute. But when Park Shi-ho saw the boy's face clearly, he was utterly shocked. Colin Locke? You're just an NPC. Why are you here? Hearing this name, the boy confirmed that Park Shi-ho had no memories of the previous life. Seemed fortune was on his side. Thinking quickly, he pretended to offer advice. You're holding the sword wrong, it'll hurt you. While Park Shi-ho was distracted, the boy darted forward and appeared in front of him. He then flung a handful of sand and mud into Park Shi-ho's eyes. Caught off guard by the sudden attack, Park Shi-ho panicked. He swung his weapon wildly, slashing aimlessly. But with his combat experience from the previous life, the boy easily dodged all the attacks. He darted forward again, reappearing in front of Park Shi-ho. This time, he thrust a werewolf fang toward Park Shi-ho. Although Park Shi-ho managed to block the attack, the boy had another plan. In his other hand, a poisoned dagger appeared. The next second, he plunged it deep into Park Shi-ho's shoulder. The searing pain made Park Shi-ho scream in agony. But the boy didn't stop his actions. This was his only chance to kill this demon. He raised the werewolf fang high, aiming it straight at Park Shi-ho's heart. Instinctively, the disoriented Park Shi-ho raised his hand to block. The werewolf fang pierced straight through his palm. That couldn't stop his inevitable attack. The next second, the fang went through his palm and stabbed into his throat. It was finally over. As he watched the life drain from Park Shi-ho, the boy's hands began to tremble uncontrollably. Thank you, both in the past and in this life. Because of you, I've grown stronger. But even so, I have no regrets. Because I've killed the monster before it could grow. As the world fell silent once more, did you think it was truly over? Due to detecting the attack of player Park Shi-ho, the system began self-repair, and NPC Colin Locke became the only variable. Thus, the system initiated a new backup. NPC Colin Locke inherited all of player Park Shi-ho's experience. At that moment, a system interface suddenly appeared before the boy. Successor of the martial arts master. Congratulations on becoming the new hero. The first thing the man did after his rebirth was kill the hero destined to save the world. Because this so-called hero was a lunatic. Not only did he collect heroines as specimens, but he also had improper desires for men. However, upon detecting the hero's DATH, the system transferred the hero's role to the man. Seeing the system interface suddenly appear, Colin's face was filled with astonishment. But before he could take a closer look, he heard Elisa's faint voice behind him. After much effort, he had barely managed to pull her back from the brink of DATH. Colin began researching the responsibilities of a hero. Game's storyline centered on saving the world. This meant that without defeating the final boss, the world would be destroyed. Now that he was the new hero, the task of saving the world naturally fell to him. While he didn't mind accepting this role, he was perplexed by one thing. Since the system recognized him as the new hero, shouldn't it grant him full system access? How was this any different from before? Thankfully, he was already well versed in the game. In this world, there existed an ancient form of magic. This magic held immense power over laws. It was also the only magic Colin had learned in his past life. It was known as the Three Commandments. The principle was to engrave 3 magical oaths onto oneself, greatly enhancing one's abilities. The first commandment was responsibility. By fulfilling a vow, the caster could gain additional power. The amount of power depended on the difficulty of fulfilling the vow. Colin's vow was to never ignore the misfortunes of good people. Colin imposed a constraint on himself to not sense energy forms. But they couldn't harm someone without spiritual perception, as all the commandments were engraved. A chain of laws embedded itself into Colin's heart. In the next moment, an overwhelming energy burst from his body. Over the following days, he first took Elisa to a nearby hospital. Then, he made his way to Melkaba Academy. Melkaba Academy played a crucial role in the entire game's story. Only by joining the academy could the journey to save the world truly begin. One of the heroines, Marriott, was a magic instructor at the academy. Due to unfortunate events later, she eventually turned into the final boss. 3 days later, the entrance exam officially began. But as all the students entered the classroom, a magic circle transported them to a pitch-black place. When they regained their senses, a window suddenly appeared before them. It displayed the physical aptitude levels of everyone. To his dismay, Colin was rated as the lowest, level 6. As expected, even as the hero, he couldn't escape his mediocrity. Afterward, the old professor on stage began explaining the exam rules. Each person was instructed to stand in front of their designated rank number. Then they were to collect their weapons and complete the monster slaying task. Their performance would be evaluated based on the time it took to kill the monsters. After the explanation, a large weapon chest descended from the sky. While everyone chose swords or guns as their weapons, Colin picked a spear from the chest. He knew it was the most efficient weapon. As the test officially began, 3 wolf monsters were summoned. Before they could attack Colin, his spear had already pierced through their bodies. Though Colin's physical aptitude was rated as the lowest, level 6. His combat experience was unparalleled. Dealing with low-level monsters was mere child's play for him. After defeating the monsters, Colin sat down to rest. What happened next, however, left all the teachers speechless. Boy had only slain 3 low-level magic wolves. But it shocked every teacher in the academy, because the boy's performance was far beyond what a level 6 student should be capable of. It took him only 3 seconds to effortlessly kill all 3 wolves. Even the top-ranking level 4 students needed at least 3 minutes to do the same. The teachers assumed there was a malfunction in the academy's testing system, so they summoned a level 4 wild boar for him. As expected, Colin killed the beast in just 37 seconds. The teachers couldn't believe it. They summoned a level 3 shadow bear for another test. This endless wave of monsters made Colin feel annoyed. At that moment, a mysterious rune appeared on his hand. In the next second, the shadow bear was reduced to ashes in a fiery blaze. This turned out to be an R-rank spell. Seeing this, the teachers were finally convinced that this boy was no ordinary level 6 student. Though they were stunned, they also felt a tinge of excitement. It had been a long time since they encountered such an intriguing student. Let's proceed to your soul test, they said. A mysterious creature was summoned next. But Colin couldn't sense the creature's presence at all. This was because of the 3 commandments rune engraved on his body. He couldn't perceive energy-based creatures, nor could they harm him. So he made a shocking decision. He abandoned the soul test in front of all the teachers. This action left the teachers confused and astonished. He actually gave up the soul test? What's going on with this boy? Moments later, the students gathered in the plaza, discussing their test results. Among them, a few students caught Colin's attention. One of them, a blonde-haired boy, was named Jaeger Beat. In the previous life, he had clashed with Park Shi-ho early on. He was ultimately slain by Park Shi-ho in a fit of rage. Thinking back now, his arrogance and haughty personality were undeniable, but for someone his age, it was fairly normal. The other person, a bespectacled boy, was Yun Kei. In the previous life, unable to control his insecurities, he defamed Park Shi-ho. He met the same fate as Jaeger in the end. But this time, everything would change. After the entrance exam, students left the testing grounds. Jaeger noticed Yun Kei sitting alone in a corner. With his arrogant personality, he approached to cause trouble. This scene was noticed by Colin. Without hesitation, Colin walked up and put his arm around Jaeger. Acting familiar, he greeted him warmly. Pointing at Jaeger's tattoo, Colin started chatting. "The design on your back, does it represent your blood type?" Hearing someone mention his tattoo, Jaeger excitedly explained, "It was designed by my mother just for me. That way, they can quickly identify my blood type if I'm injured." Colin continued to praise his story enthusiastically. Though, in truth, Colin already knew all of this. In the previous life, when Jaeger went missing, his mother came to the academy searching for him. It was from her that Colin learned about the tattoo. Using this topic, Colin quickly got along with Jaeger. In doing so, he also helped Yun Kei out of trouble. Yun Kei quickly developed a favorable impression of Colin for his actions. Little did they know, this was all part of Colin's plan. The reason he did this was to gain Yun Kei's trust. Because Yun Kei's ability was memory. With his help in the future, Colin would essentially have a free magic library. However, all his actions were observed by Elisa, as the continent's top academy, Melkaba, allowed free access to most of its facilities. The training hall was the most recommended. The reason was simple, it enabled students to undertake otherwise impossible training. For instance, Colin, who couldn't sense energy beings, could train against spirit entities there. His training soon attracted the attention of many students. Even the instructors, witnessing his combat skills, approached him voluntarily. Only students at least in their second year could withstand attacks from spirit entities. Unfortunately, Colin had only inherited the hero's title. He hadn't inherited the hero's strength. Facing the wind spirit's attack, he was ultimately defeated. Seeing this, Marriott hurried forward to comfort him, urging him not to be discouraged. "Believe me, one day you'll defeat it." But Colin remained silent, ever since he killed the hero. He knew that the future now rested solely on him, so it wasn't time to give up just yet. He stood up once again. Right now, he had neither a powerful body, nor terrifying magical energy. All he had was his rich combat experience from his past life. And with that alone, he wanted to see how far he could go. As his spear danced through the air, he unleashed every combat technique he had learned. When the spear was finally thrown with full force, his body followed it in motion. In the next instant, man and spear appeared before the wind spirit. With a downward strike from above, he defeated the seemingly invincible wind spirit. This sight left Marriott utterly stunned. Words like powerful and outstanding couldn't do justice to her admiration. In her eyes, Colin was simply a perfect being. But before she could recover from her amazement, Colin crashed to the ground like a cannonball. Overexerting himself had drained all his energy. The next day, with Marriott's careful care, his body had mostly recovered. But Colin knew he needed to improve his physical attributes quickly. In his past life, Park Shi-ho's miracle potions helped him grow stronger rapidly. Now, the only way to enhance his physical abilities was to utilize the second commandment engraved on his body. Never turn a blind eye to others' misfortunes. With that, his gaze turned to Yun Kei. Leaning close to Yun Kei's ear, he whispered something softly. Yun Kei agreed to help without hesitation. Moments later, the two arrived at the Melkaba Academy Library. This library was as large as the academy itself. To outsiders, it was a place meant to store and pass human knowledge to future generations. But Colin knew, that was all nonsense. The library was actually a place to hide magic books. As the name suggests, magic book is essentially a skill manual. Simply reading one could grant the magic or traits recorded within. This was why Yun Kei had agreed to help so eagerly. Colin promised to give him a magic book containing traits afterward. As a model student of the academy, Yun Kei knew a lot of magical theory. However, he could never fully unleash the power of magic. After all, the strength of magic was closely tied to the caster's magical energy. But with a magic book, it was different. Suddenly, Colin accidentally triggered a hidden switch. Behind the bookshelf, a secret passage appeared. This was exactly what Colin was after. He just needed to defeat the evil spirit hidden inside. To obtain what he wanted, Colin looked at Yun Kei with a wicked grin. The next moment, he punched Yun Kei straight in the face. "Alright, let's get started, Tilda." This was an evil spirit said to be undefeatable, yet the boy subdued it with a single punch. After Colin and Yun Kei entered the secret passage, the first thing Colin did was knock Yun Kei unconscious. The reason for this was to capture the evil spirit hidden there. The vampire Sabin Duke. Duke, the general who united the southern continent 800 years ago, possessed terrifying strength. Unfortunately, he was accidentally exposed to a substance called the Factor. It transformed him from a human into a bloodthirsty vampire. To protect his family from his own hands, He drove everyone out of the castle. Finally, he used magic to seal himself inside a magic book. This magic book was hidden in the Melkaba Academy library. Most players encountering Duke for the first time would end up dead at his hands. For Colin, it was no longer an issue. Because of the commandments, he couldn't be attacked by energy-based beings. However, capturing Duke became a problem. Fortunately, Colin had already devised a plan. He lifted the unconscious Yun Kei. Then he smiled slightly at Duke. "I know you're here. If you want to kill me, enter this guy's body." Without hesitation, Duke possessed Yun Kei. And that was exactly what Colin had hoped for. With a light punch, he knocked down the rampaging Yun Kei. This was one of the reasons Colin asked Yun Kei for help. Yun Kei was the weakest person in the entire academy. He posed no threat to Colin whatsoever. Now, all Colin had to do was kill Yun Kei to eliminate Duke as well. But Colin was not like Park Shiho. He simply whispered softly to Duke, and the rampaging Duke instantly calmed down. "Aren't you curious about what happened to your family?" This was Colin's strategy, using compassion. After a long conversation, Colin told Duke everything about his family. Upon learning the truth, Duke let go of all his resentment. His soul was finally redeemed. In the end, Colin obtained what he came for. After using the skill book containing Duke's magic, Colin gained the skill, Enduring Warrior's Recovery. As long as his will remained firm, he could continuously regenerate his body. Moments later, Yun Kei regained consciousness. He had no memory of what had just happened. All he felt was a stinging pain on his face. Colin quickly made up an excuse to brush it off. He then solemnly handed another magic book to Yun Kei. This was the second reason Colin chose Yun Kei. He wanted everyone to know that hard work would eventually be rewarded. At the same time, after completing the mission, Colin successfully triggered his second commandment. To his surprise, he received 80 attribute points to freely allocate. Players typically earn 5 points per level gained. This was equivalent to him gaining the stats of an extra 16 levels. After handling everything, Colin returned to the training hall. He wanted to test his current capabilities. The surrounding students thought he had gone mad. After being so miserably defeated yesterday, how could he dare to challenge again today? Everyone began mocking his arrogance. They started placing bets, convinced he would fail spectacularly. Only Marriott firmly believed he would win. As Colin once again wielded his spear, the onlookers' faces turned to shock. With a simple thrust, he effortlessly defeated the wind spirit. Even Colin himself couldn't believe what had just happened. But his shock was soon replaced by the joy of an unexpected windfall. With this newfound success, Colin gained a clearer understanding of his own strength. His physical abilities had significantly improved. Next, he needed to enhance his magical power. While he pondered his next steps, a girl's voice suddenly reached his ears. "The soul inside you does not belong to this body." The girl has a pair of soul eyes that see through life and ATH. Just a glance, then he discovered that there were 2 souls in the male subject. "Are you a time traveler?" Hearing this, Colin was no longer calm. "I didn't expect to meet the person I least wanted to meet here." As one of the most powerful forces in this game, possess a pair of eyes that see through life and ATH. She is the only female character that even Park Se-ho cannot kill. But why did she suddenly appear here? Even revealed his secret? To deal with this bomb that can never be controlled, Colin quickly pretended not to hear. But Hualan didn't mean to stop. "The original soul in you seems to have been crushed and swallowed. So you are not the owner of this body at all. You are just a thief." When Colin heard this, he was shocked again. He had thought about it countless times. Is Colin Lodge a different individual from his original self? Did he assimilate Colin or did Colin assimilate him? But for him now, all this is meaningless. After all, he is him. At this moment he stopped. Slowly said to Hualan, "In my hometown, there was once a man who would turn green when he got angry. The interesting thing is that their personalities before and after are completely opposite.